High above Earth, the Zorks floated in their giant spaceship. The aliens had been watching humans for centuries, observing their every move. The Zorks were a powerful race, with technology far beyond anything humans could imagine. They had traveled across the galaxy, studying other species, but humans always puzzled them the most. The Zorak Council gathered in a large room filled with screens that showed different parts of Earth. On one screen, they watched humans rushing around in cities. On another, they saw natural disasters, hurricanes, fires, and earthquakes, causing destruction. The Zoraks had seen this many times before. They always assumed that, one day, a disaster would be too much for humans to handle, and that would be the end. But somehow, every time, humans managed to survive. No matter how bad things got, they always found a way to keep going. This confused the Zoraks. Most other species they had studied would have given up by now. After so many disasters, many would have been wiped out. But not humans. They always seemed to rebuild, to come back even stronger. "Look at them," said one of the council members, a tall Zorak with dark blue skin. "Another earthquake has destroyed their city, yet they're already starting to rebuild." "They're stubborn," another council member replied. "But one day they won't be able to survive. A disaster will come that is too big, and they will fail." Tazrik, a scientist on the council, didn't agree. He had spent many years studying humans closely and was fascinated by them. Unlike the others, he didn't see humans as weak or fragile. He saw something else, something powerful. Every time humans faced a disaster, they didn't just rebuild. They learned from it. Their cities became stronger, their technology advanced, and they found new ways to protect themselves. Tazrik believed there was more to humans than the council realized. "They are not like other species," Tazrik said, stepping forward. "Humans don't give up, even when everything around them falls apart. They grow from their struggles." The council members looked at Tazrik with doubt. "Grow? How can they grow when their cities are being destroyed? They are barely surviving," one council member scoffed. Tazrik shook his head. "You are only seeing the destruction. But I have watched closely. After every disaster, humans come together. They help each other. They build new things. They become smarter. They learn from their pain. I believe they are stronger than we think." The council was silent for a moment. They had heard Tazrik's arguments before, but they weren't convinced. Humans seemed like a fragile species to them. They were always fighting wars, dealing with diseases, and suffering from natural disasters. To the Zoraks, it was only a matter of time before humans would face something they couldn't recover from. "We should intervene," said the council leader, a Zorak with silver skin and sharp eyes. "We should prevent their destruction before it's too late." Tazrik wasn't sure this was the right thing to do. He believed in humans and wanted to see what they could accomplish on their own. "I think we should wait," he said. "Let's see how they handle the next disaster. We might learn something valuable from them." The council leader frowned. "Wait? For what? To watch them fail?" "No," Tazrik replied firmly. "To watch them survive. To see how they overcome the next challenge. We can learn from them. They see disasters as lessons, not as the end. I believe they will surprise us." The council leader sighed, clearly frustrated, but agreed to wait. "Very well, Tazrik. We will give them more time. But if they are on the brink of collapse, we must step in." Tazrik nodded, feeling a sense of hope. He didn't know what the future held, but he had a strong feeling that humans were capable of far more than the council believed. From the safety of their spaceship, the Zoraks continued to watch the Earth, wondering when the next disaster would strike and how the humans would respond. Tazrik stared at the screens, thinking to himself, these humans were different. They were survivors in ways the Zoraks couldn't fully understand. He was sure that the next disaster would show the council what he already knew, that humans didn't just survive catastrophe. They grew stronger because of it. It was a quiet day on Earth, but deep in the ground, Something was brewing. The Zorak Council watched from their spaceship, their screens showing peaceful cities full of people going about their daily lives. Some humans were walking to work. Others were enjoying time with their families. It was just another ordinary day, but everything was about to change. Tazrik was still thinking about his last conversation with the Council. They didn't understand humans like he did. The other Zoraks thought humans would fall apart if something bad enough happened. Tazrik wasn't so sure. He had seen humans bounce back before, and he was about to see it again. Without warning, the ground on Earth began to shake. Buildings trembled, roads cracked open, and people screamed in fear. It was the biggest earthquake Earth had ever experienced. Cities collapsed, homes were destroyed, and chaos spread quickly. The Zorak Council members leaned forward in their seats, watching with wide eyes. "This is it," one council member said. "This is the disaster that will finally break them." Tazrik said nothing. He kept his eyes on the screen, watching closely. The earthquake was terrible, no doubt about that. It had caused massive damage in just a few minutes. Thousands of people were injured, and many more had lost everything. The destruction was everywhere, but Tazrik wasn't focused on the damage. He was watching the people. On the screen, he saw humans rushing out of the rubble. They weren't just panicking or running away. Many of them were helping each other. Even those who had lost their homes were checking to make sure their neighbors were okay. Rescue teams were already forming. Firefighters, police officers, and volunteers appeared from the dust, trying to pull people out of collapsed buildings. People shared what little food and water they had, helping the injured and comforting those who had lost loved ones. "They are already organizing themselves," Tazrik said quietly, more to himself than to the council. The council leader, sitting beside him, crossed his arms. "They are just reacting. Once the shock wears off, they will fall apart. They cannot rebuild after this." Tazrik wasn't so sure. He had seen this before. The humans always seemed to come together in times of crisis. It was as if disasters brought out something strong in them, something the Zoraks didn't understand. He continued to watch the screens as humans began to work together. News stations on Earth were broadcasting the damage, but they were also sharing messages of hope. Hospitals were setting up emergency tents to treat the wounded. Groups of people were working to clear the debris. Engineers were already planning how to fix the broken roads and bridges. It was as if the earthquake, instead of breaking their spirit, had given them new energy. "They will recover," Tazrik said softly, watching a young woman hand out bottles of water to rescue workers. "They always do." The council leader raised an eyebrow. "You truly believe they can come back from this?" Tazrik nodded. "Yes. They will rebuild their cities, and they will make them stronger. Humans learn from every disaster. That is why they survive." Back on Earth, days passed since the massive earthquake hit Earth, but the human spirit did not weaken. On the Zorak spaceship, the council continued to watch the humans closely. The destruction was still clear. The buildings were in ruins, the roads cracked, and many areas were without power. Yet, something incredible was happening. Instead of giving up, humans were already rebuilding. Tazrik stood in front of the large screen, observing the progress. Rescue teams were still hard at work, but now something new was taking place. Engineers, builders, and everyday people were coming together to rebuild their homes and cities. On the screen, a group of humans was seen working on a broken road, using what little tools they had. They were laughing, encouraging each other, even though the task was difficult. "They are rebuilding already," Tazrik said with pride. "I knew they wouldn't give up." The council leader watched, still skeptical. "It's too soon to celebrate. They may start rebuilding, but they won't be able to handle the long-term effects of this disaster." Tazrik turned to face the council. "That's where you're wrong. Humans always find a way. They don't see disasters as the end. They see them as lessons." The other council members listened, some nodding in agreement, others still unsure. Tazrik could see that even the doubters were starting to change their minds. They had been watching the humans for a long time, waiting for them to fail, but now they were witnessing something they didn't expect: resilience. Back on Earth, the humans continued to push forward. In one city, a young engineer named Sarah led a group of volunteers to rebuild a collapsed bridge. She had lost her home in the earthquake, but she wasn't focused on that. Instead, she was determined to help others. Sarah's hands were dirty, her clothes covered in dust, but she smiled as she explained her plan to rebuild the bridge stronger than before. "This earthquake taught us a lot," Sarah said to her team. "We'll make sure this bridge can handle anything in the future. We're not just fixing what was broken, we're making it better." Tadric smiled as he watched Sarah. She reminded him of why he believed in humans. Even after losing so much, they always looked forward. They didn't just rebuild, they improved. Every disaster made them smarter, tougher, and more united. Tadric had seen this pattern before. Humans turned their pain into progress. "They don't give up," Tadric said softly, almost to himself. Meanwhile, on another screen, a group of scientists was working on new technology. The earthquake had caused major power outages, but instead of waiting for help, these scientists were developing solar-powered generators. Tadric watched as they discussed how to use the sun's energy to power entire neighborhoods. It was a solution born from the disaster itself. The council members were surprised. They had expected humans to struggle for years after such a massive earthquake, but already they were innovating. The humans were finding ways to adapt, to learn from the catastrophe, and to move forward stronger than before. "This is how they survive," Tadric explained to the council. "They don't just rebuild what was lost. They grow. They evolve." The council leader, still watching, finally spoke. "I admit, they are different from what we've seen in other species. Most civilizations crumble after such a disaster. But humans, they seem to thrive." Tadric nodded. "Yes. Every time they face a challenge, they find new solutions. They use disasters as opportunities to improve. That's why they're still here. It's why they'll continue to survive." On Earth, the rebuilding efforts were moving fast. In just a few weeks, many areas were already showing signs of recovery. New houses were being built, stronger and more advanced than before. Roads were repaired, and communication lines restored. The humans weren't just fixing the damage. They were preparing for the future. "They're rebuilding better than before," one council member observed. "I didn't expect them to recover so quickly." Tadric smiled again. "That's because you don't see what I see. Humans are never beaten by disasters. They may suffer, they may lose, but they always rise again. They use each catastrophe as a lesson, a chance to grow." The Zorak Council was silent for a moment. They had underestimated humans. What they had thought was a fragile species was proving to be much more. The humans' ability to adapt and improve after every disaster was something the Zoraks hadn't seen in any other race. "I see now," the council leader finally said. "Humans are not just survivors. They're builders. They turn every challenge into an opportunity." Tadric nodded proudly. "Exactly. That's why they'll continue to thrive, no matter what disaster strikes next." As the Zoraks watched the humans rebuild, they realized that this species was unlike any other they had encountered. Humans didn't just survive, they thrived through every challenge. And Tadric knew, with each new lesson learned, humanity would only grow stronger. Tadric had seen enough from the spaceship. Watching humans on screens wasn't enough anymore. He wanted to meet one face to face, to understand them better. The more he watched them rebuild after the earthquake, the more he felt there was something special about them. His curiosity grew stronger each day. The Zorak Council wasn't convinced, but Tadric was ready to take the next step. Without telling the Council, Tadric decided to visit Earth in disguise. He used his advanced technology to take on a human form. He made himself look like an ordinary man, blending in with the people he had been watching from afar. His plan was simple: meet a human, talk to them, and learn how they really felt about the disasters they faced. Tazric landed quietly in one of the cities that had been hit hardest by the earthquake. The streets were still cracked, and some buildings were in ruins, but life was slowly returning to normal. People were working together, clearing debris, and rebuilding. Tazric wandered the streets, observing everything closely. He wanted to find someone who had experienced the disaster firsthand. That's when he saw her, Sarah, the young engineer he had watched on the screen before. She was hard at work with a group of volunteers, fixing a damaged bridge. Her clothes were dirty, and her hands were covered in dust, but her face showed determination. Tazric knew she was the perfect person to talk to. He approached her slowly, feeling nervous for the first time in a long while. "Excuse me," he said, trying to sound casual. "Do you need any help?" Sarah looked up, wiping sweat from her forehead. She smiled at him, but her eyes showed exhaustion. "We could always use more hands," she said. "Grab a shovel." Tazric wasn't used to physical labor, but he picked up a shovel and started helping. As they worked side by side, he carefully watched Sarah. She moved quickly, directing others, offering help, and always keeping a positive attitude. Tazric couldn't understand how someone who had lost so much could stay so strong. After a while, Tazric decided to ask her a question. "You seem very determined. Even after everything that happened, you're still here, helping rebuild." Sarah nodded, leaning on her shovel for a moment. "Yeah, well, what else can we do? Giving up isn't an option. We got to rebuild, right?" Tazric looked at her, puzzled. "But you lost so much. Your home, your city. Doesn't that make you want to stop, to give up?" Sarah shook her head firmly. "No way. We've been through worse. Disasters happen, but they can't break us. Every time something like this happens, we get back up, stronger than before. That's just how humans are." Tazric felt a surge of curiosity. "Stronger? How does a disaster make you stronger?" Sarah smiled again, a little sadly this time. "Because we learn from it. The earthquake was terrible, but now we know how to build better. We're not just putting the pieces back together. We're making everything safer, smarter. If another disaster comes, we'll be ready." Tazric was amazed. Humans didn't just survive disasters. They used them to improve. He had seen it from the spaceship, but hearing Sarah say it in person made it feel even more real. He admired her determination. "Isn't it hard, though?" Tazric asked. "Doesn't the constant rebuilding wear you down?" Sarah sighed, looking out at the half-finished bridge. "Of course it's hard. Some days it feels like we'll never get back to where we were. But giving up isn't an option. When you lose something, you don't just sit around and feel sorry for yourself. You figure out how to move forward. That's what makes us human." Tazric nodded, understanding more now than ever before. Humans had a deep strength that came from their struggles. It wasn't just about surviving. It was about learning, adapting, and pushing forward, no matter how difficult things became. "Do you ever wish things were easier?" Tazric asked, wondering if humans ever got tired of the constant challenges. Sarah laughed, a soft but genuine sound. "Of course, I'd love for things to be easier sometimes, but I also know that." Back on the Zorek spaceship, the council was in chaos. Tazric had been gone longer than expected, and the other council members were growing anxious. They had been watching Earth closely, but now they worried that Tazric might have gone too far in his interest in humans. "We should have sent him to observe, not to interact," the council leader said, pacing back and forth. "This could be dangerous. We don't know what these humans are capable of." Another council member, a tall Zorak with red skin, frowned. "But what if Tazric is right? What if humans can teach us something? They've survived disasters that would destroy other races." The leader shook his head. "Even so, he has no idea what he's getting himself into. He should have followed our orders and stayed away from direct contact. We do not know if humans can be trusted." Meanwhile, Tazric was deep in conversation with Sarah, Completely unaware of the turmoil back on the spaceship, he found himself fascinated by her strength and determination. The two had been working side by side for hours, and Tadric learned more about humanity with each passing moment. "Humans are resilient," Sarah said, wiping sweat from her brow. "We face challenges every day. It's what makes us who we are." Tadric nodded. "I see that now. You are more than just survivors. You are builders and learners. You take every disaster and turn it into a lesson." Sarah smiled. "Exactly. It's not easy, but we do it together. We support one another, and that makes us stronger." Back on the spaceship, the council members were still debating Tadric's actions. What if he is in danger? "We cannot allow him to get too close to these humans," the council leader insisted. "We must bring him back before it's too late." The red-skinned Zorak spoke up again. "But what if he discovers something important? We have watched humans for centuries, and we still don't fully understand them. Perhaps it is worth the risk." "Risk? You mean putting one of our own in harm's way?" "No, we cannot allow this. We must intervene," the leader said firmly. Suddenly, the spaceship's alarm went off. The council members froze, looking at each other in shock. An alert flashed on the screens, showing a large group of humans gathering near a damaged building. It looked like a protest. "What is happening?" the council leader demanded. "Why are they gathering like this?" One of the technicians quickly studied the screen. "It seems they are upset about the rebuilding efforts. Some feel they are not being done fast enough, while others are worried about the safety of the structures." The council leader frowned. "This could lead to chaos. We must act now. If Tadric is still with them, he could be in danger." "Perhaps we should let him handle it," suggested the red-skinned Zorak. "He has shown he can communicate with them." "Let him handle it. He is just one Zorak among many humans. This is a crisis, and we must act quickly," the leader snapped. In a moment of tension, the council leader made a decision. "Prepare the ship for departure. We will go to Earth and find Tadric. We need to assess the situation before it spirals out of control." As the Zorak spaceship descended toward Earth, Tadric was still working with Sarah. He had learned so much about humans and was beginning to understand their challenges better. However, he sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The once hopeful mood among the volunteers began to darken. "Why are they gathering over there?" Tadric asked, noticing a crowd forming in front of a makeshift stage. He could hear raised voices and see angry expressions. Sarah sighed. "Some people are worried. They feel the government isn't doing enough to help. They want answers, and they want them now. I understand their frustration, but this protest could cause more problems." Tadric felt uneasy. He had seen protests before, and they often led to conflict. He turned to Sarah. "What can we do to help?" Sarah nodded, a determined look on her face. "We need to calm them down. If they're upset, it could affect the rebuilding efforts. Let's go over there and talk to them." Tadric followed her, knowing that communication was key. As they approached the crowd, he could feel the tension in the air. People shouted for change, demanding attention from the leaders. "Listen," Sarah called out as they reached the front of the crowd. "We understand your frustrations. We are all feeling the effects of this disaster, but we need to work together. Fighting among ourselves will not help us rebuild." The crowd quieted down slightly, turning to listen to her. Tadric stood beside her, sensing that Sarah's words were starting to have an effect. He saw the passion in her eyes and admired her courage. "We are strong," Sarah continued, her voice steady. "But we must support one another. Let's focus on what we can do, not on what's wrong. Together, we can create solutions and make our city better." Tadric felt hopeful as the crowd listened, but in the back of his mind, he knew the Zorak Council was watching closely. He could only hope that they would understand what he had learned about humans. They were not just a fragile species, they were full of strength and determination. As tensions eased and the crowd began to disperse, Tadric felt a sense of pride. He knew he had made the right choice in coming to Earth. He had found not just a species of survivors, but a race of builders and learners, united even in their struggles. But as he looked back toward the horizon, he sensed that trouble was still brewing, not just among the humans, but within the Zorak Council as well. The battle for understanding had just begun. As Tazric continued to work with Sarah and the other humans, the Zorak spaceship hovered silently above the city. Inside, the council members were deep in discussion, their faces serious. They had been observing Tazric's interactions with humans, and now they faced a decision that could change everything. "We cannot allow him to continue this way," the council leader insisted. "We need to test the humans and see if they are truly worthy of our respect." A council member with green scales raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean by a test? What are you planning?" The leader thought for a moment. "We will create a situation, a challenge. We must see how humans react under pressure. If they fail, we will know they are not ready for our help." The other council members exchanged glances. Some looked worried, while others nodded in agreement. Tazric had grown close to the humans, and they were unsure about testing them. But the leader was firm in his decision. "We will use a simulated disaster," the leader explained. "We will create a situation that mirrors what they have faced before. If they can work together and overcome it, we will know they are strong. If they fall apart, we will know they are not ready for our assistance." Meanwhile, back on Earth, Tazric was completely unaware of the council's plans. He and Sarah had spent the day helping people in the community. They worked on rebuilding homes and schools, and Tazric was amazed by the human ability to unite and support one another. As the sun began to set, Tazric felt a sudden shift in the air. Something was coming, something big. Sarah noticed too. "Do you feel that?" she asked, looking around. "It's like the world is holding its breath." Before Tazric could answer, a loud sound echoed through the city. It was a loud roar, followed by a bright flash in the sky. The ground shook, and dust filled the air. Tazric's heart raced. He looked up to see the Zorak spaceship creating a storm-like effect above them. "Everyone, stay calm," Sarah shouted, her voice cutting through the panic. Tazric watched as she took charge, organizing people to move to safety. "Come on, let's get to the school," she urged, pointing toward the building nearby. "We need to help everyone find shelter." Tazric felt pride as he followed her lead. Sarah's strength was shining brightly in this moment. He knew they had to act quickly. The ground shook again, and Tazric sensed that this was not just an ordinary event. As the dust began to settle, Tazric caught a glimpse of the spaceship overhead. He realized that this was part of the Zorak Council's plan. They had created this disaster as a test, and he was part of it. He felt anger rising within him. This was not the way to learn about humans. "Why are they doing this?" he thought, frustration filling his mind. He wanted to reveal the truth to Sarah, but he couldn't expose his origins. Instead, he focused on helping her manage the situation. As the chaos continued, Tazric and Sarah organized groups of people, guiding them to safety. They worked tirelessly, moving families to the school gym where they could stay safe. Tazric used his Zorak strength to lift debris and clear paths for those who were trapped. "Thank you," a woman exclaimed as Tazric helped her and her children. "You're so strong." Tazric smiled, but he felt troubled inside. He was using his abilities to help, but it felt wrong. The Zorak Council was watching, judging the humans based on a situation they had created. Sarah turned to Tazric, her face serious. "We have to show them that we can work together. We can't let this divide us." Tazric nodded, knowing she was right. "We have to unite everyone, make them see that this is just a test. We cannot let fear win." With renewed determination, they began to rally the people in the school gym. Tazric and Sarah spoke to everyone, urging them to remain calm and to help each other. "This is our chance to show what humans can do." Sarah called out, "Let's turn this disaster into an opportunity to unite." As the crowd listened, Tazric could feel a shift in the energy. They began to organize themselves, forming teams to check on neighbors and distribute supplies. People who had been frightened just moments before now found strength in their unity. Hours passed, and the chaos began to fade. Tazric felt a sense of pride watching humans come together. They were proving their strength, even in the face of a challenge created by the Zorak Council. But in the shadows, the Council was still watching. "Look at them," the Council leader said, his tone filled with disbelief. "They are working together, but can they maintain this unity when the test is over?" The red-skinned Zorak replied, "They are stronger than we thought. Perhaps this test is revealing their true nature." Tazric sensed that the Council was still skeptical, but he believed in the humans. He watched as Sarah led a group in organizing a plan to ensure everyone's safety. She was a natural leader, and the people respected her. "Let's keep checking in on each other," Sarah said, her voice strong. "We can do this together. We are more than just survivors. We are a community." Tazric felt a surge of hope. He realized that the Council's test, although wrong, had brought out the best in humans. They were not just rising to the occasion. They were thriving. Tazric vowed to make the Council see this. As the night wore on, the chaos settled into calmness. The Zorak spaceship continued to hover above, but Tazric felt a new sense of purpose. He knew he had to defend the humans and their spirit. They were worthy of respect, and he would do everything in his power to show that to the Zorak Council. In the end, Tazric believed that the true strength of humanity lay not just in their ability to rebuild, but in their ability to unite and support one another, no matter the challenge. And now, he had to make the Council understand that truth. This part emphasizes the conflict and tension between the Zorak Council and Tazric, while showcasing the resilience and unity of humans in the face of an artificial disaster. As the night wore on, the atmosphere in the school gym began to shift from panic to calm. Tazric watched as humans worked together, providing comfort and support to one another. Sarah stood in front of the crowd, her voice steady and full of hope. "We have faced a challenge tonight, but we will not let it break us. We are stronger together." Tazric felt pride swell within him. He had witnessed the true spirit of humanity. They were not just survivors. They were fighters who refused to back down. He knew that this was the moment he needed to show the Zorak Council how remarkable humans truly were. Above them, the Zorak spaceship hovered silently, the Council members observing everything closely. They watched as Sarah inspired the crowd, guiding them to organize food and blankets for those in need. Tazric could see doubt and surprise on the faces of the Council members. They had expected chaos, but instead, they found unity. After several hours, Tazric decided it was time to confront the Council. He knew he had to speak up for the humans and prove they were worthy of respect. He turned to Sarah. "I need to talk to them. They're watching us, and they need to understand." Sarah looked concerned. "Are you sure? They created this situation. What if they don't listen?" Tazric nodded, determined. "I have to try. This is too important." With a deep breath, Tazric focused on the spaceship hovering above. Using his Zorak abilities, he sent a signal to the Council, letting them know he wanted to speak. Moments later, a beam of light surrounded him, and he felt himself being lifted into the air. As he reached the spaceship, Tazric landed in front of the Council. The members looked surprised to see him, especially after witnessing his time with the humans. "Tazric, what have you done?" the leader demanded, his tone sharp. "I have seen what humans are capable of," Tazric replied, standing tall. "They are more than just a race that survives disasters. They unite, support one another, and learn from their experiences." The Council members exchanged glances, some looking skeptical. "But they are chaotic. They panic under pressure," the leader argued. Tazric shook his head. "That is what you expected. What you saw tonight was not chaos. It was strength. They faced a challenge created by you, and instead of falling apart, they came together. They turned fear into action. The green-scaled council members spoke up. But do they truly have the potential to grow? Can they be trusted with knowledge beyond their own? Tadric felt anger rise within him. They can, and they will. I have worked alongside them, and I can assure you, they are worthy of our respect. They learn from their mistakes and find ways to improve. If we offer them guidance, they will become even stronger. The council leader crossed his arms, clearly still doubtful. And what if we allow them to continue? What if they fail us? Tadric took a step closer, his voice firm. Then it will be our duty to help them rise again. We cannot judge them based on one disaster. They are capable of greatness. We must give them the chance to prove it. Silence filled the room as the council members considered his words. Tadric could see that some were beginning to understand, but the leader still looked uncertain. We cannot forget that they are fragile. Their history is filled with conflicts. But their history is also filled with resilience. Tadric replied passionately. They are learning, growing, and adapting. Look at how they came together tonight. They turned fear into unity. If we treat them with respect, they will surprise you. At that moment, the red-skinned Zorak spoke up. Perhaps Tadric is right. We have watched them for so long without truly understanding them. This test has shown us their strength. Maybe it is time to reconsider our approach. The council leader frowned, but Tadric could see cracks forming in his resolve. And what would you propose, Tadric? He asked, his voice softer now. I propose that we work together, Tadric said, his heart racing. Let us offer our knowledge and technology to help them rebuild. Let us guide them, but also learn from them. Together, we can create a better future. The council members murmured among themselves. Tadric held his breath, hoping they would see the truth in his words. After a long pause, the council leader finally nodded. Very well. We will consider Tadric's proposal, but we will continue to monitor their progress closely. Tadric felt a wave of relief wash over him. Thank you. Give them a chance, and you will see how far they can go. As Tadric returned to Earth, he felt a renewed sense of hope. He had spoken up for humanity, and now he believed the Zorak Council would support them. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but it was a start. When he landed back in the school gym, the atmosphere was different. The humans were still busy organizing, but now they wore smiles of hope. Sarah rushed over to Tadric. What happened? Are they going to help us? Tadric smiled, feeling energized. Yes, they are going to offer their support. But it's up to us to show them we are worthy of it. Sarah's eyes lit up with excitement. This is amazing. We can really rebuild together. As they worked together, Tadric felt a bond growing between him and the humans. He realized that this was only the beginning of a new era, a chance for both Zorak and humans to learn from one another and grow stronger together. With the Zorak Council's support and the strength of the human spirit, Tadric felt confident that they could face any challenge ahead. They were no longer just two different species. They were allies, ready to build a brighter future side by side. And as the sun rose the next day, illuminating the city, Tadric knew that the world was changing. Respect had been earned, and together, they would thrive.